Hi everyone, and welcome to the full moon in Cancer video. So I'll be talking about the full moon in Cancer that happens on the 3rd of January. I'm recording a few days prior. And I'm going to talk about the 2 weeks that unfold after that. This is the culmination point of the lunar cycle that began with the new moon in Sagittarius. So this was a new moon in Sagittarius cycle that we're now reaching the midway point of. And this midway point is coming with a lot of tension. You may be going to yourself, why am I feeling off? Why am I feeling perhaps agitated, emotionally activated, or even feeling anxious? We are coming to a moment of challenge collectively as well. We're being asked to do or say a hard thing, which is bringing up a lot. And so let's get into it. So the new moon exacts at 5:03 a.m. on January 3rd. This is Eastern Standard Time. The sun here in Capricorn is opposing the moon across the way at 13 degrees of Cancer. And notice that the moon is very close to Jupiter, and the sun is also is in a near opposition to Jupiter in Cancer as well, which is currently retrograde. And as you can also see, the sun is sandwiched here between Venus and Mars that are also in the sign of Capricorn. We have a lot of energy here in Capricorn, and Mercury has just recently joined them a few days prior. And all of this Capricorn energy is opposing the moon across the way in the sign of Cancer. As we move through this very intense moment in the lunar cycle, so much being illuminated at this time around ambitions, the goals we have set for ourselves, the reality, the truth of where we are in our life. And I'm really speaking to the cardinal signs at the moment, the cardinal signs being Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So anyone with prominent placements in those signs, where have you been? Where did you think you were going? And at this point, what's being revealed to you that's a really hard truth that it really sits at the core of your emotional world, really sits at the core of your inner home. And the mutable signs that are currently sitting with Saturn and Neptune right now, sort of ready to part ways with this dynamic duo that is going to make its entrance into Aries soon, very soon in the new year. The mutable signs are going to be feeling perhaps motivated and uplifted in some shape or form through the emotional turbulence of this full moon. What I mean by that is where have the mutable signs, and the mutable signs being Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Where have you been in a bit of a fog, in a bit of a perhaps illusion in your life? Where have you been escaping to? And this full moon is really revealing those parts of you that you have been suppressing, emotionally speaking, and really wants you to see the entirety of what's been a really long journey that's coming to a close, a cycle that's coming to a close. With Neptune, 14 years, with Saturn for the last 2 years, what hard truths have been revealed about where you've been like, I don't want to acknowledge something about myself or about my life. And this full moon really sits at this pivotal moment, offering support to you, asking you to delve deeper within yourself, to acknowledge what you've been avoiding or ignoring or suppressing. So for the fixed signs, and that would be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this moon's activations are a little less felt. However, this full moon in Cancer is also an opportunity to do some emotional healing, to do some like a spiritual reset, to reconnect with that intuitive side of yourself, the spiritual side of yourself that knows what you need to move forward, knows what you need to feel better, and is also demanding to not be neglected, is demanding new types of action to bring nourishment to your emotional world. So I've written more about all of this on my blog, on Patreon, or my website, whichever one you'd like to check out. And I also have the full moon in Cancer readings. There are unique Astro Tarot readings that I do for the rising signs. And I have more guidance in that way, more intuitive guidance for you in that way. If that speaks to you, you can join my membership. So, having said all that, I'm now going to get into the astrology of the 2 weeks that, wrap up this lunar cycle for us leading up to the new moon in Capricorn on the 18th of January. And we have a few cool things happening. We've got a Venus Cassimi on the 6th, and we have a Mars Cassimi on the 9th. And what does this mean? A Cassimi is when a planet is at the heart of the sun. So it's an exact conjunction between the sun and a planet. In the sign of Capricorn, Venus and Mars are offering their tenacity. They're offering us the drive and motivation to take action. So after having this kind of tense moment with that full moon, we're being gifted the energy to move forward in some shape or form. However, we're going to get clear on what that is. What is our values? That's Venus Cassimi getting us clearer on the bigger picture of our life in connection to our values. Then the Mars Cassimi on the 9th is so much about the actions we're taking and how aligned are those actions with the bigger picture of our life, with our goals. What goals have we set? And Venus and Mars come together on the 7th. In between those two Cassimis, they come together. We're getting the green light on something we've been sitting back on. However, I do want to say that we're gearing towards the end of a lunar cycle. This is the 3rd week of a lunar cycle, which is a time to reassess. It's a time to connect with others. It's a time to reflect and change our approach, perhaps, based on what that full moon illuminated. However, when we get into the week of the 13th, this is not the time to press the pedal and to move forward in a fast way. This is a time of a lunar cycle where we're kind of unwinding. So keep that in mind, because so much of what is going to be revealed to you will be in terms of your approach and your perspective, and you're not really to take massive action until that new moon in Capricorn on from the 18th onwards. I also want to say that from the 9th to the 14th, there's 4 oppositions to Jupiter. So Jupiter being currently in Cancer, and I did just mention that Venus, the Sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury are all in the sign of Capricorn. So all of them will be making an opposition and, exact opposition to Jupiter. Venus on the 9th, Sun and Mars on the 10th, and on the 14th, Mercury will oppose Jupiter. An opposition is often external pressure forcing us to make a decision. So there's an intensity with an opposition that can almost feel unbearable, in that we have to do something. So pay attention to where Capricorn is in your chart, where Cancer is in your chart, where generally the cardinal signs are, what areas of life, what planets are residing there, do you have prominent placements there? And there's something really massive happening with these oppositions that are really pushing something, pushing a decision. And in a more general way, this is really, again, about the balancing act between how we're taking care of ourselves and how we're relating to our loved ones, our family, our home life, inner home, outer home, and our sense of responsibility, the ambitions, the pressures, the duty, the sort of external weight that is impacting that part of our life. So I want to say that with all this Capricorn pileup for this 2 weeks that are unfolding after the full moon, we finally get to that last day before the new moon in Capricorn, that 17th of January, where Venus enters Aquarius. And she's about to make a conjunction with Pluto soon after, which is really an awesome energy, which I'll speak about in my next video. But the 17th really sits as a really hopeful, motivating energy around laying to rest that lunar cycle. It's that final balsamic moon, dark moon phase of the Sagittarius lunar cycle that began 4 weeks ago. And we're here now receiving, the sun's sextile with Saturn. We're receiving the sun's trine to Uranus. We're thinking that we can do the hard thing that we don't think we can. We are seeing hope in terms of a new path forward for ourselves with the energy of the 17th. And really, it kind of builds up from the 15th because there we've got Venus making a sextile with Saturn and Venus trining Uranus, similar to what the Sun will do on the 17th. So both of these energies are bringing us a kind of a moment of possibility before we get to that new moon in Capricorn, which is a really great lunar cycle to set and sort of solidify some of the commitments we have. So the rest of January, we'll start to see the pileup of planetary energies in the sign of Aquarius, because we are going to have the sun entering Aquarius the day after the new moon in Capricorn, which is also, as I mentioned, the same day that Venus and Pluto are in a conjunction. So the 19th is going to kick off a very radical Aquarius season. So let's just take a moment and pause. There's a lot of information. I just want to say that I feel like the energies are maybe a bit rattling as we enter into the new year in January. And looking at the year ahead, a lot of astrologers have a lot of different things to say about what's coming, and I want folks to not feel worried. I want folks not to feel scared. The unknown can feel that way. However, we are all having activations in our charts for a reason at this point in time. I really want you to have faith. That's that North Node in Pisces asking us to have faith in what we don't quite understand and what we don't know as a fact. We're being asked to not only tap into our discernment, but also to tap into our heart and to tap into our inner knowing, to connect with higher consciousness, to source, to goddess, to God, to whatever, however you define something bigger than yourself, energies bigger than yourself, to the loving ancestors, to Divine Mother. This is what we're being asked to do as we enter a new calendar year, but also really as we enter, this kind of kicks off mostly at the end of January with with Neptune's entry into Aries, and then Saturn joining it soon after in February. And really, I think we're going to see a challenging January, February, and March until that equinox point. But I'm really hopeful for when Uranus leaves Taurus at the end of April to see how these hopeful configurations, these hopeful aspects between all these planets that are in new placements, how this is going to play out. Because one way or another, change is coming. Real surprises, perhaps, shocking changes. But at its core, I know this is for our greater good. I have so much hope. And I hope you do too, because being stagnant and being stuck with what is not working for our greater good is not the way to be. Sometimes we have to do the hard thing to get to a better place, not just for ourselves, but for all of us, because we are one ultimately. And I think this is the message of the cosmos, and this is what really began about 7 years ago, who really kicked off in 2020 with that astrology and what we saw unfold in the world. So this year really has that same 2020 intensity, but not the same unfoldings. We are writing this trajectory together. That's how I feel. I think this is exactly where we're at. And so much of this is about our perspective. So much of this is getting clear from the fog, from the illusions, the delusions, the misinformation. And I think as Chiron gets ready to leave Aries this year for a short stint, it doesn't actually enter Taurus for until 2027, but we are going to have finally a moment of reprieve from that long stay in Aries, where I think it was so divisive. It was so much about identity. but in a really like it had its positive and also it's negative in so many ways. I think it was great to identify oneself and find one's peoples, so to speak. And in many ways, it created so much division. And I think this is that Pluto and Aquarius energy bringing the collective together. And I think this is exactly Uranus and Gemini as well. And with Pisces, with Neptune and Saturn parting ways with Pisces and entering Aries, I just these energies are giving me hope for a new way of relating to one another. Do I think it's going to be mm, light and fluffy? I really don't. I think you all know it's not going to be like that. But I have so much faith in us. I have so much faith in all of us, each of us, you guys listening here, and people around the world, across generations. I have a lot of faith and hope in us. What we have especially experienced in the last 2 years and witnessed has really woken a lot of people up in massive ways at the cost of people's lives, at the cost of so much harm. And so we're really being asked to really rise to the occasion. This waking up also requires taking action. This waking up also requires changing our own ways. So I'm really hopeful for that. So sending you all a lot of care and full moon in Cancer blessings. My dear cardinal signs, hang tight. The mutable signs, sending you a lot of love. Hope things are clear for you guys. And the fixed signs, hang in there as well. This is a pretty potent full moon and 2 weeks that unfolds after it in terms of what it reveals to us. And how it brings us back home to ourselves and to the path that is ahead of us. Take care, and I'll talk to you all in a couple of weeks.